Yeah, so we are week 4 of shame and social anxiety month. Going to try to bridge a gap between shame and social anxiety and shadow work for this call, just because that's the next major monthly theme. I mean, there's also, I think it's worth a quick comment that there aren't exactly hard lines dividing many of these things, right? Even cold exposure and leaning into discomfort relates to shame and social anxiety, also relates to shadow work. I think the thesis I'm going to try to move us through today is that shame is one of the most effective pipelines to putting things in your shadow, just largely just parts of you that you reject, and the parts of yourself that you are ashamed of are a very direct path to shoving things in the shadow. Yeah, one comment I caught from a fair number of people is sometimes the frustration of returning to themes that you think you've already dealt with. And I mean, I've had a huge deal of frustration as well throughout my life of like, fuck, why am I still dealing with this? I thought I dealt with this like 2.5 years ago. Um, I've come, and maybe this is just a story, but currently the story I've used the examples of upward and downward spirals a lot. And if you look from like the top down, it basically looks like you're going in circles, right? Because you're still coming back. So actually, I think there's something really powerful of coming back to the same theme because you're coming back to it from a different perspective. And yeah, I mean, the major categories of your life, like your relationship with yourself, your relationship with people, your emotional state, your work, like these things are worthy of uh, continued check-ins. So sometimes when you come back to the same theme, instead of being frustrated about it, you can be like, ah, great, second layer of this bad boy, or the eighth layer of this bad boy. It depends on how many times you've come back to the same thing. There are some that are very deeply rooted, so they might take a few passes. Yeah, lots of spiral comments. Yeah, they're most definitely spirals. All right, so for this one, I wanted to double click on shame specifically. We've spent the past few uh, meetings this month doing, I would argue, more of a social anxiety leaning. I think I want to bring us into a shame leaning for a second. And one of the things, I was doing some digging on this, and I found a framing from Brene Brown that I really like. She has become kind of cult classic on kind of shame and emotional work. Because I remember 3 weeks ago, something like that, I kind of tasked all of us to come up with our own working definitions of shame and social anxiety, because it's not actually, I mean, you could ask 10 different people what shame is and get 10 different responses. But for the course of this discussion, I found something I really like. Yeah, here it is. So her quote is, shame is a focus on self. Guilt is a focus on behavior. Shame is I am bad. Guilt is I did something bad. Yeah, guilt is I'm sorry I made a mistake. Shame is I'm sorry I am the mistake. And that I really, really liked. She actually goes on, and I mean, I'm pulling from different articles at this point, but she actually argues that shame itself is largely just destructive, that there's not a huge, it's not actually that beneficial. I would actually argue because it's not really based in truth, right? There's no part of you that is a mistake. You're not, this goes into the somewhat spiritual cliches of like, you're not your thoughts, you're not your actions, you're not your emotions, any of it. And there's a power in that because, yeah, again, this stuff is not a commentary of your own value as a human. And the connection for me, this is actually why like shame and social anxiety were grouped together, is that if you feel essentially ashamed of who you are, right? I am fundamentally flawed in some way. I think a natural second step is that because you either don't want to admit that to yourself, and you definitely don't want other people to come to the same conclusion, you start micromanaging almost everything in your life, but most particularly how you come across to people and how other people like see you. And in having to manage like every word and every little smile, and am I holding eye contact too long, and did my voice inflect properly there? Right, you're in this constant like back and forth between what you're doing and how it's being perceived. And the faster and faster that goes, you get something like anxiety, right? You get this like humming, this literal shaking, because you're just trying to micromanage something moment to moment that um, is almost on a flawed premise, because you don't need to manage it, because you're making the assumption that everyone is going to come to the same negative ass conclusion about yourself that you apparently have, or at least whatever you're ashamed of. And I mean, I think, yeah, we come back to almost the theme of the dojo, which is like, yeah, okay, it's great to recognize that. It's a huge step to recognize that, right? It's just like, there's no part of me that's not worthy of being seen, loved, and supported, right? I'm not fundamentally flawed. Maybe I do some things I'm not totally excited about, but again, there's a valley, an absolute valley of difference between, yeah, I kind of didn't like that I did that, and oh, I kind of don't like me. Like a big difference between that. Um, so yeah, I'm actually going to combine. We're going to do a little, I guess you'd call it a guided meditation, maybe a guided walkthrough, to see if we can discover some of the parts of ourselves that we've disowned because of shame. And I'm actually going to combine that with the social anxiety exercises we've been doing of the 2-minute talks, where we are going to go on a little venture, try to find some parts of us that we're ashamed of, and then we're going to tell everyone the parts of us that we're ashamed of, see how that goes. So we went from talking about an object to talking about how awesome we are to talking about the parts of us that we are ashamed of. Um, yeah, and we'll see how that goes. Um, before that, before that, there's one other thing I think that is worth just putting into the zeitgeist again, because I've actually been feeling this acutely as well, and I think some others are directly or indirectly, which is, I think there's a beautiful part of all of us. I mean, that's why we're literally on this call, of like a willingness to show up, do some hard work, look at difficult places, go through challenging experiences. And it can come with that level of intensity, like, oh, I got to push myself through this, I got to go. Um, I also want to point to the fact that we are still living right now at a very intense moment in time. Like, even just off the top of my head, like, let's look at the last 3 weeks, maybe the last month or so. And I mean, I'm sure there's dozens and dozens of other examples, but there's a fucking war happening, which seems archaic in this day and age, right? Journalists and innocent people are dying literally as we speak. Um, whether you have money in traditional money or crypto, right? Money is fucking tanking right now, paired with inflation and absolute governmental inane shit like that. Oddly enough, I don't think there are too many North Americans on this call, but I mean, in the last 48 hours, it seems like the United States decided to just take a 6-decade step backwards in relationship to the empowerment of females. So, I mean, that's a very heavy thing to sit with as well. Um, I mean, there's a lot going on. So I think it's worthy just to kind of give an acknowledgement to that, both in the collective zeitgeist and heart of humanity, and also just to yourself. Like, there's an absolute clusterfuck of events happening right now, and it's yeah, it's easy to get on yourself of, oh, I haven't done enough, oh, I haven't shown up for this. It's like, okay, breathe. Like, literally, humanity is not really equipped to deal with this amount of shit all happening at once, and for whatever reason, we're having to deal with it right now. So just a level of self-compassion, I think, is worthy there. And compassion for, yeah, a lot of the people affected by this. I mean, whether it's money being stolen from you, whether it's body autonomy rights being stolen from you, whether it's your life being stolen from you, like a lot of people are going through it right now. I felt like that was just worth acknowledging. Okay, so we're gonna do a quick little, yeah, it's a kind of meditation, kind of meditation. Um, yeah, so however you want to get comfortable for that, most of us are most of us are already sitting. Can be helpful if you think you can turn your camera off if you want. That helps you turn into yourself in any way. Um, yeah, we'll kick this off. It won't be too long. Should be less than 5 minutes. Yeah. So when you're ready, close your eyes. Take a big breath in. Big sigh out. Just focus on your breath. Focus on the weight of yourself on the chair or on the ground. There's no right or wrong way to do the activity that we're about to do. We're just going to see if any thoughts, feelings, ideas come up. Let's take another big breath in. Big breath out. And just keep your breathing at a normal pace. So with your eyes closed, I'd like you to picture a door. There's a door in front of you that I want you to walk towards. You can reach out, open the door, and behind the door is a staircase going down. It seems to go down a very far distance. It's a little dark, it's a little damp, but let's take an adventure down there. So start walking down these stairs. Further you go, the less light there is. Maybe there's some fire on the walls. Maybe there's a dangling single light bulb. It's a little dank, it's a little damp. Eventually come down these stairs to a hallway, kind of grimy, prison-esque hallway. And there seem to be rooms in this hallway. There might be 2 rooms, there might be 20 rooms. Depends on what comes up for you. And, really we have found ourselves in the deep dungeons of our own psyche. This is kind of where we have kept parts of ourselves hostage, locked up, because we don't want them to come up to the surface. We don't want them to make themselves known in our lives. And for a minute or two, I want you to walk along this hallway, look into the rooms. They may very well be jail cells. You might be opening a door, you might be looking through metal bars. But look into a few of these rooms and see if you can identify what it is that you have put down here. What parts of yourself are you unwilling to let surface? So much so that they have to be locked away. What parts of you are not worthy of seeing the light? If it helps, you can ask questions to whatever is in the rooms. What are you? Why are you here? How did you get here? And if you have come across anything down here, just tune into how it feels to have parts of yourself locked up like this, parts of your own power, parts of the fullness of who you are, sectioned away, dark, damp recesses of your psyche. Maybe you can give them a hug. Maybe you can open the door for them. Maybe you can invite them to come back up the stairs with you. However you'd like to do it, can start maybe turning on some lights, coming back to the staircase, can walk back up, maybe with some of you following closely behind, and you can come back to this space whenever you're ready. Yeah, so one of the things here I think that is worth speaking to is two things. It can be helpful, but I don't think it's necessarily as important as to how those parts of yourself got down there. Real question is, what do you want to do about them now? You want to keep them down there knowing that they're sitting there rotting away in some mental jail cell? Or do you want to bring them back up? The other thing I would point to is that it's not I mean, there's almost a meta of like feeling shame about having shame. Like it's not your own fault, actually, that there are parts of you that were down there if you came across anything, right? Society for the past hundreds, if not thousands of years has uniquely used shame as a mechanism for, on the best argument, you could call it coordination of a lot of people, but on the worst, you could call it manipulation, right? There are heavy amounts of shame overtones in many of the dominant religions. And the shame, I would argue, is one of the perhaps favorite tools of the left, which has largely steered a lot of public discourse for a long time. Right, a lot of beautiful things have come from it, but yeah, shame as a tactic for influencing others is, again, if we actually go off of Brene Brown's thing, is uniquely toxic and destructive. And again, if you're growing up as a child, you're taking cues from parents, people, and culture, and they're using shame as a dominant tool. Like, of course, you're going to have stuff there. You just, again, come back to the question of, okay, well, there's parts of you down there. What do you want to do about that now?
It's like how they say, if everyone woke up tomorrow and decided to love themselves like in full, like how many industries would go out of business entirely because their whole structure is based around you not loving yourself as is and wanting to like
Yeah,
capitalize off of that. Yeah.
yeah, completely. And yeah, I think it's worth underscoring this point of there's no part of you that is not worthy of being seen, loved, and supported. We're just now in the problem where if you did come across parts of yourself that were down there, well, now they're kept down there by you, right? And it's our own opportunity to kind of slowly invite them back up to the surface. And yeah, there may have been times you tried to do that in the past and people didn't want to see it, people couldn't handle it, so you kind of like shove them back down there. Yeah, part of it is finding people with the capacity to hold all of you, which you don't always find. I would offer a token that the space here is able and willing to hold you in whatever you want to share. So I you can. I mean, at the end of the day, everything we do here is optional. If this stuff gets highly sensitive for you and you don't wish to share, that is completely okay. Uh, I'm going to open the floor, and yeah, I think I'll start this one of yeah, using our social anxiety stuff. I will put a timer on for 2 minutes, and if you want to talk about anything that came up there, speak it into existence. Let it be seen, loved, and supported. Uh, you are you are welcome to. Um, let me get my. Uh, yeah, maybe a last comment before I do this. I mean, I kind of use that visuals as a yeah as the bridge to the shadow stuff. Right, we'll get into a lot of shadow stuff next week, but shadow is basically any part of you that you reject and literally in your shadow, right? You put it behind you, you put it out of sight. And yeah, shame is a shame is almost the driver of what would cause you to take a part of yourself, drag it down that staircase and lock it in that room, put it in your shadow. So I view a very direct pipeline between shame and shadow work. yeah, if you want to find anything largely in your shadow, ask yourself what you're ashamed of. That might be a different way to say it. Okay, let's do this. Yeah, I have two things that have always been extremely present in my own kind of shame narrative. Uh, Probably the biggest one was my body. I continue to have huge fucking body shame issues. Growing up, I was always the small one. I was always kind of the skinny, small kid. God, uh, yeah, whether it was being picked on in school, I played contact hockey for 15 years of my life, and being small in contact sports is not always a fucking great way to get around. Um, I mean, of course, there's classic, what do you call it? Ideal male physiques that I always had a story that I didn't line up to. So that actually just caused me to withdraw a whole fucking bunch. I think it's largely why I spent so much of my time on the internet and writing, because people didn't have to deal with me in person, right? They could deal with the better part of myself, which was my head. Um, yeah, that is, yeah, that has translated a lot into my relationships. I think I actually let myself get fucked around in relationships a lot because of that. Um, Hard to make other people respect your body if you don't. That was a big one. Um, Still, it still had huge. This is probably the past few years has been most active for me. Huge repercussions around sexuality and comfort with that, because it's a highly physical activity, and I'm ashamed of that whole thing. That was nuts. Um, One of the other parts of me that I had, and still to an extent have locked down there, is a because it's not exclusively bad things, right? One of the other ones was basically assertiveness or leadership. Um, yeah, through a series, I guess, from high school onward of just, yeah, no, being too much, don't step up, don't tell people they're wrong, right? Just actually, I put a whole lot of my own assertiveness and leadership down in the fucking caverns of consciousness. Uh, yeah, which actually really hurt to recognize the first time, and it's still something I'm working through. Um, those two, I think, have been some of the more dominant ones. Um, yeah, yeah, body shame and power, almost writ large, just expressions of power, whether it's confidence, leadership, assertiveness, aggression, um, have often found themselves at the bottom of the psychic ladder for me. Cool. If anyone else would like to do this, I would invite you to. Speaking this stuff out can be cathartic. Yeah, you can just raise your hand and we'll popcorn, and I'll raise a hand when your time has come. Sounds good, Nick. Let's do it.
Yeah, so it's interesting listening to you talk because if you didn't run through that visualization exercise, I would have probably said also like things to do with my body and also things to do with, feeling socially anxious and shy and not feeling like I'm always able to be present. Like that's always something I've always felt like, what the fuck is wrong with you? But this exercise, I feel like it pointed me to something deeper that's like maybe responsible for those things and sometimes the shyness. So um, the three the three beings that I encountered, which funny enough, when you're like lead them up the stairs, I was like, these things, these things can't come up. They're not ready to come up here. I don't know. I put like a pillow in the one's cage and like gave the other one some food. And I was like, I'll get back to you guys a bit later. But it just feels like they would lead to like destruction and like, yeah, really, yeah, not good things. So the first thing was this is almost like a golem like creature. and it was like really, so yeah, they were all behind bars, and it was really like fucking aggressive and like biting the bars, but it was also like weak and small and skinny, but it had like these sharp teeth, and it was really like like fucking like, you know, with these fangs, and it was like really going for just fucking everything, and it kind of felt like something like hatred. And yeah, I feel like 2 minutes is not enough time for me to like transmute these and say what they want to be, what they would be in the light, so I'm just going to give you like what they are in the dark. And yeah, it just felt like hatred, but a kind of like powerless hatred. It connected me to a memory of being younger. Yeah, when I used to like lose board games, and I'd literally like flip the fucking, you know, the board, and everyone would just kind of like make me feel just like I'll go to my room and like sulk, and I remember my family kind of like laughing at me and shit, and it's just this feeling of like want to fucking kill everyone. So that's kind of energy behind that, I think. Maybe a little bit darker. Anyways, so then the next one was this gorilla. Yeah, and it was like this big, like beefy, like meaty gorilla, and it was just like pure impulse, and it was very connected to like sexual masculine impulse, and like a sense of like losing control, and like aggression. And I don't know how to like describe it, but it's just like it brought me back to this memory of, there's a show called Misfits. Yeah, there's a show called Misfits, and there's this one scene where people had like superpowers, and this one guy lost control of his power, and is to basically turn into a gorilla. Um, and yeah, I mean, long story short, he just like turned into this gorilla, and he like couldn't help himself from like basically like not attacking women, but just like running up to different women, and it was the male sexual impulse like completely lost control. Yeah, so that was behind that, the other bars. I gave him some bananas and just like turned the lights on, let him know I'd be back there just now. I will talk some more. And then the other thing was a snake, and this has been like coming up in my dreams quite a lot, and I don't know exactly how to explain it either. It kind of reminded me of that scene in Harry Potter where the snake can talk, like the Slytherin snake. Well, not the Slytherin snake, the one in the beginning that's like, you know, and it talks, and it's like got the tongue and everything. And that one just feels like evil, to be honest. Or it would be interesting for me to unpack what I mean with that word. But that one I definitely couldn't let up the stairs, because like I really couldn't see how that one was, you know, at least a gorilla could like lift up cars and like do some shit like that. But this thing just had like, it's just had like, I don't know, like evil, like feverish intentions. And yeah, it's just a fucking deadly snake. And I think that also ties to just feelings of being brought up to be like a good boy, you know, and this comes into like the people pleasing and stuff, just like be good, be good, be good. And then like losing touch with what it means to be bad, and losing touch with, I think, parts that definitely are vital, you know, they're a part of me. So they've got some like purpose that they want to play in my life. And I don't know exactly what that is, but there's just this feeling. Yeah, I think maybe sometimes I put on a thing of like, oh, I'm so honest, I'm such a good guy, I've got such a good heart, like that kind of shit. And that leads me to like putting in the shadows this other part of me that's actually like, no, like fuck you. You know, like actually sometimes I don't like, I don't like some people. You know, sometimes I actually feel like I do like pretty much everyone. But yeah, so those are the three things, and they're not allowed to come up yet, like straight up. They're just not ready for that. They're in the dungeons, but I'm just gonna make it a bit more pleasant and more of a loving space for them. And yeah, I'll keep communing with them and seeing what comes through, if I can eventually get them to work for me rather than against me. Did you give me the 2-minute sign? No, am I still going?
2 minutes was long ago, but I didn't want to cut that off, dude. Yeah, there's some of the OG Jordan Peterson lectures touch really powerfully on this, which is some of the people who think they can't do any evil are some of the people who perpetrate some of the craziest atrocities of all time. Particularly like, yeah, if you're unwilling to say fuck you to people and you'll just do what most people do, like shit can go south really quickly. There were a lot of people complicit in Nazi Germany that was not Hitler, right? Just doing what they're told. Always an extreme example, but I mean, an example nonetheless. Yeah, the universal imagery, the snake, super interesting. Biblical undertones there, right? That stuff comes up for a reason. That's archetypal. Super cool. Um, yeah. Anyone else feel called for this round? Yeah, Jay
I feel like I
Scott.
can. Okay.
Oh, all right. We'll do Jesse then Laura. Let's do it.
I actually, I relate a lot to what Nick said toward the end about like not really seeing the purpose in bringing some of this stuff up. Like a lot of my dungeon dwellers, I feel like they're there for a reason, and I don't really see how they would benefit me or anyone in any way. But I guess that's something that I'm gonna have to work on going forward. But yeah, actually, basically the same thing that Eric said, like body image stuff. I grew up and I was always like really small. I was always really pretty and skinny. And I feel like since I like started gaining weight, I have completely just stopped identifying with my body. It doesn't feel like me. I feel like I am a skinny person like inside. So when I stopped looking on the outside the way that I felt on the inside, I just like I kind of just rejected it. And yeah, like I said earlier, just made me feel like if I can't love my body, like how can anyone else? And that also shows up in the sexuality stuff. And I feel like everyone kind of perceives me as a like a cute person, and I have started to resent it a little bit because I'm like, sometimes I don't want to be cute. Sometimes I want to be like hot. I don't know. So yeah, there's that. And that's probably the biggest stuff. And I just feel like I care a lot more about what people think than about how I feel. And that comes up as people pleasing. And I just desperately want to be seen as like the cool girl and the one that is like okay with anything. And I just want to make people feel comfortable and happy, and I want them to like me. And because of that, I kind of shut down anything that might feel right, that doesn't like go along with the way other people want to perceive me. Yeah. That feels pretty complete for now.
Yeah, there is something here. I mean, this is also paired with the somatic therapy school. Actually, again, Body Keeps the Score is really good timing for this. There's always a perhaps a word of caution that gets put out in that space of going really slowly with this thing, or these things of like, yeah, welcoming this stuff back, because I think both Nick and Jesse pointed to this really nicely, which is both there is an extreme, you can feel, right? Particularly if you get some visuals around this stuff, like you can feel how much power is actually just locked away, like just raw, archetypal, volcanic, fucking cosmic power is locked up. And yeah, if you're not prepared for that, or if you haven't cultivated the skill set to deal with that, you can just get on one hand, you could say you could get possessed by it, right? You can just get completely run over and like puppeteered by the stuff because it's so powerful. So yeah, it's always going really slow, going really slowly with this stuff. Because again, like on one hand, you have so much power locked up, right? That'd be a good thing to invite back into you. But at the same time, you have a lot of fucking power, like need to need to handle that in doses. That's why I really like even Peter Levine's book title, just called Waking the Tiger, because it's like, yo, you're playing with serious fire right now, but it's also the fire of transformation. Awesome. Thanks, Jesse. We had Laura next up.
Yeah, yeah, I feel like a lot of what everyone has said is really reign true for me. Like, I feel like just kind of shying away from the fullness of my power and just kind of just not, it's like having it, but like keeping it to myself and not really bringing it out into the light or like posting things online or like just feeling, I don't know, like just hiding, like knowing that there's like good material there but just hiding it away. And I don't know particularly why I do that. Maybe it's just, from past dynamics that were very one-sided where people would just take and take, and like you're someone, many of us are givers, many of us are people who want to see the people around us doing well. We want to give back, but then there's people who just take to where you just feel like, oh well, you have those like residual energies come up towards like, if I do that again, what if I met with like the same type of energy, and it like thwarts like us showing up and like fully expressing ourselves. So like having those safe spaces where we can do that is really transformational. But like Eric said, it like has to be, you know, in doses sometimes, because that's like there's can be really powerful material there and the reasons why we feel that way. But like, yeah, for me a lot of it's just like, yeah, just like being willing to step into that fully and express that outwardly and not care what people think, whether they like it or not. I think has been hard for me. I've also dealt heavily with like body image issues. Like my whole life I've been like insanely pale, like so fair skinned. Like people used to make fun of me for it my whole life. And it's like, I'm not from here. Like so many people in Florida, it's like they'd come back. I remember in middle school, like girls would like come back from spring break and they'd all put their arm up like this, and they'd put their arm up to me. They're like, oh yeah, I got tan. It was so mean. And I remember that just like really sunk in. And it was just like, and it's like to the point where like I never wear shorts out. Like to this day, like I'll wear shorts at home, but like I don't go, because it's like for some reason I feel like I don't know, that just like got deeply ingrained as when I was a child. I'm just like, no, like pale isn't pretty, and like, oh, like I can't show skin like that. And like that was always like really heavy for me. And even like, having issues with like mental and emotional health in the past 10-15 years, because with diabetes, like burnout is very, very easy. It's so easy to fall into burnout, just like not wanting to take the measures every day to like keep yourself going. And like I was on like a lot of like heavy like medications for a while that made me put on a lot of weight. And then like with diabetes, it's hard to put off the weight. So it's like feeling yourself like go from a place, like me growing up, I was super skinny too. Like I was a twig in like middle school. And then it's just like, it's like feel yourself fall short of the potential that you have, and then just like have that. It's like even if other people don't see it, it's like that lives in you and that like affects your decisions to go places or to do things. Or like even for me, like having skin issues, and I'm like, oh, I'm so pale, so you see every little thing. And it's like feeling like I've had a lot of issues, like insecurities around that growing up. So like that's been heavy for me, like feeling like, oh, it's like because I'm so fair skinned, like everything is that much more noticeable, everything is like that much more in someone's face, and it like prevents me from like showing up. It's prevented me in the past from like going to events or going to this or that, or like wearing the same thing as other people. Like like I said yesterday, I was down at like in St. Pete, and everyone's in these crazy outfits for Pride, and it's just like I don't think I would show up in a tutu like that. Like I don't see myself having like the moxie to do that. But it's like in other areas of my life, sure, but like I still have like, I don't even know if that's shame. It's just like, yeah, just like something that like scarred me when I was younger, just feeling like that wasn't welcome, and like different tones and types are like not as readily accepted as beautiful. And so like feeling like having to hide in my clothes, like that's something I've done like my whole life, and I like want to break out of that, you know? It's like it's something that I shouldn't feel like ashamed of, but that's always been there. So I know it's kind of like a weird one, but like that's been a big one for me like my whole life. Like people like would call me Ginger or Casper or like whatever the fuck. And it's like I can't help that I'm not from here. Like my skin doesn't produce, like I just have a different skin type, you know? So like that was big for me. That was like really big for me growing up. And that's still something I'm like actively working on accepting myself through. Like just for any of us, like loving the skin that we're in, the body types that we're in, while we're actively working on getting them how we want, you know. I don't think there's anyone that's exempt from that, you know. It's just we all have our things. We all have, you know, those things that we don't feel fully comfortable with yet. But I think the more we can speak on these things and like you said, Eric, like bring them to the light, and in loving presence, like that can dissipate just a little bit more and we can start taking it upstairs. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, yeah, there's a bunch of good stuff here. Yeah, I mean, I've worn baggy clothing for decades at this point. Again, hiding in your clothes is a good way to say it. Um, yeah, there's a way this connects with Nick's share as well of like it's only really when you keep them locked up, hidden out of sight, that they metastasize and become this obscure, grotesque monster. Actually bringing them up, yeah, you can transmute them back into like, I mean, gorilla was a great example because on one hand, like strongest land animal per body, like poundage or whatever. But I mean, gorillas in the wild just fucking sit around and eat leaves all day. Like they're super chill, super chill. They're not actually like the scary King Kong. They're incredibly, yeah, not humble, but they hang out a lot. Not innately destructive.
Can
Yeah.
I share next?
Yes,
Or
please.
were you done? Sorry, did I interrupt
Yeah.
you? Okay.
Yeah. All yours.
Kind of chomping at the bit. And I'm trying not to shove that part down. Yeah, I feel a little energized by this conversation. It has a lot to do with my life's work and my life's path. So I'm like, and I don't know if anyone's heard about Janina Fisher. She is connected with, what's it called? Pat Ogden's work, sensory motor psychotherapy. It's like somatic experiencing. It's another body-based, bottoms up, like nervous system, body up, very powerful modality. And she talks about this structural dissociation model, and you get all the different parts from trauma. And so in my basement, there were all my parts that she outlines, and there's a lot of vulnerable ones, hurt, needing, not cared for, orphaned parts, ones that are even selfish, because that wasn't okay somehow. And then I also related, Evie, to your empowered ones, and I have so many on that front, like really angry, enraged, also powerful, teacher, a lot of capacity, but it's like, oh hell no, don't let that out, like, oh my God, you might really be killed, really be singled out then. Leader, the parts that have the capacity to protect my boundaries and some of my male energy, it's like, oh no, that is not safe. You're gonna really get in trouble there if you let that out, especially my lineages, what's there. Yeah, I really related Nick, when you talked about the powerless hatred, I really feel like those parts of me are like child parts that, you know, they're so upset they don't have the power and they're so enraged, but they come from that powerlessness, and then there's this kind of enacting that it's from my system, it goes in a spiral, and they don't, because they weren't loved, they don't get to have their rage and then have it transformed. And then there's all my frozen parts arrested, parts incapacitated, really the oppressed, the oppressed to the point of the freeze and the fight, flight, freeze, fawn, cry for help. And then my deeply creative, wild, expressive parts. Like I am like I was in my women's group this morning, and you know, I'm like a total dancer and free and like expressive as hell. And when does it come out? Like it's my language. It's like, but you know, we live in this culture, and it's like uninhibited freedom. And yet, like, you know, what's okay is more, you know, the reactions against trauma, like, no, just be small, be little. So I'm feeling kind of on fire about, you know, this conversation. And I have more I want to say. I'm going to stop for honoring everyone's time, but I will say at the end, Evie, if I can just stay on and try to connect with you around communicating, I would love that, because I'm not totally sure, again, how to do that, because I'm not participating in some of the forums. Aho! Ah!
I love that. Yeah, of course. We could talk after. Yeah, it's been I've loved shadow work for a while. And one of the things I've almost been surprised I don't hear a lot about, because I think it's more relevant than a lot of us think. But yeah, there's a concept of the golden shadow, which is like, the shadow is just any part of yourself that you reject, repress, and put away. And it doesn't have to be only negative parts of you or negative parts of you, right? Stuff like confidence, creativity, assertiveness, leadership, spontaneity, and just energy, like just being fucking excited, you can just put away because your parents are like, yo, no, calm the fuck down. Or like, no, you can't do this in school. You're not sitting still. It's like, even those beautiful parts of you, yeah, they go into the golden shadow. And another one that comes up for me is like, I think the more we, you could probably keep doing that exercise yourself, like going down the tunnel and seeing what, and I think the amount of cages would actually surprise most of us, right? A lot of us have been able to identify like 1, 2, 3 things fairly strongly, but like, I bet you could go on for dozens. I bet most people could find that hallway of psychic prisoners extends fairly far down, because yeah, there's a lot that, particularly when you're growing up, like if you get a few comments of like, stop doing that repeatedly, that thing is gone. And then over decades of time, like there are a lot of things that are probably stuck down there. A lot of beautiful parts, a lot of ideas, a lot of dreams, a lot of character traits. It's crazy. Yeah, did anyone else want to share their, here we go. Race was first, Jessica next. There we go.
Yeah, so I definitely resonated with what a lot of people said. One thing that really struck to me, Laura that said it, of like the idea of you had it all, and it's like more frustrating that you can't get it now. And I feel like that's the big, like, main kind of shame and shadow for me, is this kind of thing of like, yeah, social anxiety basically. Of like, because it's like I know that I've been the complete opposite of that. Like, there's so many periods in my time that I've been like super confident and whatever. So it's like that part of me that is a bit less confident, doesn't know what to say. I feel like that's my biggest shadow, and I've known that for a while. And I always try and push that down, and I find it very hard to be in that mode of being. Like I always try and, yeah, I don't know, fake confidence or whatever, instead of just like, yeah, allowing what is there to kind of be there. Like it's really the thing I'm most ashamed of. I think it's like, I think for me, it's like a lot of people know me as that guy that's like super energetic and super confident, or whatever. So it's like, I feel like in many ways, I'm letting like people down, which goes back to the people pleasing, and then also kind of letting myself down because I'm not living up to my highest potential. So that's the main one. Besides that, what kind of popped up is jealousy, and I kind of saw that through someone. It was more like a mirror. Like I saw the person that I was jealous, like a big person that I've been jealous of, like kind of throughout my career, because they've kind of like, I kind of like started with them in a way, and they kind of skyrocketed to like, you know, they're one of the biggest, you know, whatever in the world. And I know that was there, and I definitely kind of repressed that. And yeah, the ideas of kind of body image definitely popped up as well. Just like, yeah, like my actual, like my body, and then also just like, yeah, feelings of not being good looking enough. I think it comes from like school of like, yeah, like you know, what comes to mind is like, yeah, being kind of rejected at the prom, and I know that definitely like brings those kind of things. I kind of push those down, and then also the opposite of like thinking that I'm the greatest person in the world, and you know, like the kind of a, you know, typical kind of ego of like I'm the shit. Like I definitely push that down. And lastly, which uh showed itself as as a Voldemort from Harry Potter, which probably makes sense because I've been rewatching these films, which is kind of just like, yeah, like the kind of evil side of me that does want power and control. And yeah, I don't know. That was probably the big part that I was like, yeah, not really willing to let come up. Like, you know. Anyway, yeah.
Yeah, I feel that. I feel that. We're gonna explore a lot of that next few weeks. Super excited to hear that. And yeah, Jessica.
Okay, so it's interesting to see that the parts are getting like more and more specific actually. Like I remember like the first time I did something like that, it was like very general, like body shame. And now I felt like it's more specific to literally taking up space. So because my body is like large and I need more space, like literally more space, like when I'm sitting down or when I have like, I don't know, like especially like planes are like horrible. When you have a fat ass, it's not fun at all. And that's like, I really feel like there is so much shame because people don't understand that and shame me because I need that or because I stand for that. And so I regularly shut that down and just rather be comfortable or like rather be uncomfortable than speaking up and saying, okay, you know, I need more space here, or I need like a comfortable chair or something like that. And that was like, oh, yeah, that's like really huge at the moment inside of me. And that is also like, yeah, it just makes it hard to like go out and like just have fun and not think about that kind of stuff when you know it will come up eventually. The other part was a very specific judgmental part around my abilities, especially around my coaching abilities and my power to lead other people and to give them an experience to guide them in a transformation. And this part is like really judging that I'm not good enough at that, that I'm not capable enough, that I'm not powerful enough, that I don't know, that I basically don't know what to do, or like that I don't know my shit, whatever. And the last part, that was really interesting because I touched that part so often, but it's still there. It's actually around I always say like a dark side of sexuality. It's like this very having power in sex, having like this ravishing quality. And I feel like often like a sexual hunter, and I love that part. But I still feel a lot of shame around that because it's like I'm not supposed to feel that, or it's like too much. And like, yeah, people definitely reflect that to me, that it's too much, that it's too sexual, that it's too holy shit. Like I don't know how to deal with you in that state. And that's like, so I repress that a lot. And yeah, I feel shame to express that and to not play the nice girl, basically, or like oh yeah, I'm the sexually enlightened person, and of course I'm not doing like the bad stuff in sexuality or whatever you want to call it. So yeah, I think that's it, and that were the 3 pieces that were showing up today. Thank you.
Yeah, I love this. Yeah, we're gonna have some good collective material for the next few weeks. Super excited for this. It's gonna get juicy. Yeah, so we're gonna wind down. The piece I have for homework is 2 things. I'm gonna send a drumming track or 2 that is really good to like basically keep you anchored if you wanted to go and do that kind of guided visualization walkthrough again. There's a 15-minute one, there's a 30-minute one, I believe. And so yeah, two possible avenues. One is I would just do the guided visualization once again. I think the more clearly you can name what exactly is down there, how it got down there, and any emotions or memories you have related to them, that'll be a lot of really good material that we can work with. If you wanted to go a little beyond that, I would recommend actually sitting and writing about the individual ones, just really digging into the details. So 2 recommendations: either do the visualization and identify, or if you feel comfortable with what you've identified, dig deeper and just write about it so that we can really start chewing into them the next few weeks.